Well, I don't support cap and trade, and I never have supported cap and trade. One thing that you can tell is the proof's in the pudding. The legislation that I supported, that was also supported by Marco Rubio, actually shredded Charlie Crist's cap and trade plan here in the state of Florida, and we remember that that's how it was reported at the time. So I think people who are coming back and saying that that we supported it, it's just not factually correct. And the reason why I didn't support it is because cap and trade would have a negative impact on our ability to grow jobs. It's a job killer. It would also increase energy costs. And so the legislation that I supported, that Marco Rubio supported, and as it was reported at the time, shredded the plans. It actually prevented cap and trade from being implemented here in the state of Florida, and that's why we don't have it, was because of the bill that we passed. And I wouldn't support cap and trade, and I never will.
Now, what about your car you used to drive? You used to drive an electric car. Was that a gimmick? Were you pushing that agenda? Can you explain to us that?
Well, one of the first things I did when I was in the state legislature was support legislation to provide incentives for hybrid cars. And one of the incentives, actually the incentive, was to be able to drive in the HOV lane on I-95 regardless of the time of day or how many passengers you had in the car. One of the criticisms that I received at the time was that I didn't own a hybrid car. I was actually being criticized for sponsoring legislation to promote hybrids, but didn't own one. Actually, I remember when we sponsored this legislation, the people from Toyota actually brought one of the cars to Tallahassee, and I got to drive it. Jeb Bush got to drive it around the Capitol as well. But I was criticized for not owning a hybrid. So one of the things I did, without any tax incentives or rebates, I went out ultimately and bought my own hybrid car that had the sticker in it on the back that allows you to drive in the HOV lanes. And so that was really the beginning of being introduced to new technologies. But again, it wasn't subsidies or mandates. It was consumer choice. And that's why I decided to go out and buy one. A few years later, I was introduced to the technology of electric cars that run on zero gas whatsoever, and had the opportunity to rent one for a few months and drive one around town. It was during the height of gas prices being getting up to $3+ at the time, which was the peak at what they were then. And so it was a great way to promote energy independence. This issue has always been about national security for me. Our nation's reliance on foreign sources of energy, predominantly from countries that don't or that view us as hostile, and certainly that don't like us very much. And so from my perspective, our dependence on foreign oil is something that I look at as a national security issue. I'm the only candidate who never wavered on the issue of offshore drilling off of the coasts of Florida. We voted for it when I was in the state house to support exploration for oil and natural gas off of Florida's coasts. And then, as many people will recall, after the BP blowout, a lot of people changed their minds. A lot of people started to backtrack on their support for it. And I've been one who has said all along that we need more exploration for domestic sources of energy off of Florida's coasts, off in the Gulf, in Anwar, and some of what you're seeing now, these new technologies to extract the shale oil that exists out there. So this has always been an issue for me of national security, and it's one where I'm very proud of my record, and certainly one that I believe in technology, but not in government mandates and government subsidies.
Now, you said you're the only candidate. Are you referring to the senatorial race? You're the only candidate that hasn't switched their position on energy independence. So we can allude to the fact that maybe Senate President Herodopoulos or Senator Lemieux have changed their position on that.
Well, when I voted in the state legislature, I supported offshore drilling off the coast of Florida for oil and natural gas exploration. After the BP incident, there were a lot of people who started to waver and started to hedge, and I can just clearly and confidently say that I recognize this is such an important national security issue. This is important for us to create jobs. This is something that I think that we need to continue to move forward on. And while after there were a couple of times when it hasn't been popular, my position hasn't changed, because I think we need to stay determined. No different than right now as it relates to nuclear energy. A lot of people have been very hesitant in the after effects of what's happened in Japan, that maybe Florida and America should get off of using nuclear power. You can't do that, and I'm a big supporter of safe and clean nuclear power. Makes up almost about 20% of our nation's energy portfolio. I know that some countries now are talking about getting off of nuclear. I think that's the wrong direction for us. We know that we can prevent some of these accidents and incidents from happening, but we need to continue to go forward with an energy policy that's going to make America more energy secure and that's going to help create jobs here in our own country.